This is my song about the hobby of ham. I've taken up your time with my freaky jam. If you hear my CQ, you can give me a call if you choose. We can talk about the weather or the bottom of the cycle blues.
This is The Art of the QSO or Contact with me, Jim Heath, W6LG, your YouTube Elmer with Ham Radio Basics. And music by Raul Midon, A3RM, two-time Grammy Award nominee. This is how to have an interesting ham radio conversation on HF single sideband. We're going to talk about listen, listen, listen. There are different kinds of contacts or QSOs that some technical issues that need to be adjusted. Make the conversation about the other person. Some topics are okay, others probably not. And most importantly, enjoy the conversation. Don't get the bottom of the cycle blues.
When the grid goes down, I will be there. And when there's no one else around, I can...
Hi, I'm Jim, W6LG, your YouTube Elmer with Ham Radio Basics. Welcome to my radio room here in Rockland, California. If you've just upgraded and now have HF privileges, this presentation is for you. And first of all, congratulations, because HF is going to be a lot of fun. Don't need to be afraid, don't need to worry. It's going to be relatively easy. And if you make a mistake, you make a mistake, and guys will pretty much help you out. I first went on HF in 1964, so for me this is 57 years and probably between 50 and 100,000 contacts during that time, probably closer to 100,000. So I have some advice that we'll go over in this presentation, and probably the two important things to take away from this is listen, 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 and listen some more. And two, have fun, enjoy it, meet people, talk to people, have a good time. Just dig into it and have a good time. First, let's talk about the HF bands just in a very general way. And what you'll find is that conditions are frequently changing, often changing. So I looked over at the clock because I know that in about 30 minutes for me, 20 meters will begin to open up to Europe, and I'll be looking for some of my friends like S51DX or S57DX, Giannis and Slavko, and OK2RZ, Yuri. I say Yuri because I can't pronounce his name. And A71AM I've talked to recently, and DF2BO and DF2PY. Guys like that have been good friends for some of them for 50 years. As far as the bands go, the lower frequencies, the longer wavelengths, 40 and 80 meters, just in general, as a rule of thumb, they're good during the daytime for local contacts, not so much for DX outside the US, outside the continent, let's say. At nighttime, that layer that absorbs signals during the daytime is pretty much gone, and there can be some really good DX on 40 and 80 meters. 20 meters and up, probably 20 meters is the best choice for DX because it's even at the bottom of the sunspot cycle. There are days when it can be really good. At the bottom of the sunspot cycle, 40 and 80 tend to be better. As the sunspot cycle increases, 20 through 10 meters becomes the place to be. At the top of the sunspot cycle, 10 meters can be unreal. A simple dipole. When I first got on 10 meters at a new location 40 years ago, I put a dipole up about 8 feet off I tied it to a tree, so it was between 6 and 8 feet, between around 2 meters off the ground. I was working Europe with 100 watts with ease, but that was the top of the sunspot cycle. So 20 through 10 meters, the bands are very different. We're lucky to have them. that we're privileged to have them. 20 meters is a good band for looking at the gray line, the area on the planet that follows a path of the gray line, and you can Google that and find out more about it, but the gray line propagation can be really good. 15 meters is generally a great band for several years during the sunspot cycle. It can be open several hours a day, and as I said, 10 meters at the top can be just an incredible band. When you get on HF, there's a couple of things, and I'm talking about single sideband, there's a couple of things to talk about. And I'm not going to get into feed lines or antennas, just a real quick discussion of setting mic gain and compression, because that seems to be a thing that puzzles a lot of guys. What I'd like you to do is to have the microphone 2 fingers from your lips, and I'm just saying that because it's one way I can describe it that everybody can get right. So 2 fingers, have the microphone right here. And the reason for that is if the microphone's like that mic is a long way away, it tends to pick up room echo, which I'm sure that mic is doing to some extent. So close talking the microphone and adjusting the mic gain for the proper level is the way to eliminate a lot of issues, including room echo. With respect to mic gain, the position of the control on the transceiver, the mic gain control, does not matter. What matters is what the metering is telling you. So look at the meter on the transceiver, put it into the ALC position, run the mic gain up and down until the indication is about half of the ALC scale. Put it right there for now. Then turn on the speech processor because you want to bring up the average. And I talked to a well-known broadcaster, W4RN, formerly W0YR, about that. And he and I both agree that some level of processing really, really helps. It could bring up the average 3, 4, or 5 dB. So turn on the speech processor, adjust it for about 5 dB of processing on the meter. Then go back and reset the mic gain. Because you've adjusted the compression, it can affect the mic gain. Reset that for about half of the ALC scale. Don't put in a lot of lows. If you have an equalizer, add some highs, reduce the lows. So you want to have the lows low and the highs high. And that's my best description of how to set the mic gain so that it will sound reasonably good. And it's important to have it that way. You don't want to go on the air and have a bunch of distortion and try to talk to somebody and they can't figure out what you're saying. With respect to getting on HF, you might want to try calling CQ, and there are a couple different kinds of CQ. One is where you're just really looking to talk to anybody anywhere, and you can say that, CQ, anybody anywhere, it's W6LG. Or if you're looking for DX, and generally that means outside of the continent that you're on, say CQDX. But listening becomes really important. If you tune around and you listen and the band is dead, whatever band you're on, then calling CQDX probably won't do much. Another way to find out about conditions is to look at one of the DX clusters, and my favorite one is DX Heat, dxheat.com. Really well organized. You can select a single band and you can select a mode. You can decide from where the DX spots are coming. It's got some great filters built into it, and it's relatively easy. If you hear somebody calling CQ and you want to answer, it's just give that person's call sign. OK2RZ, this is W6LG. You may not even need to give the other person's call sign. In the case I mentioned, that's Yuri in Czechoslovakia, and there can be lots of interference, so sometimes I'll give his call sign. If it's a stateside guy, you can just give your call. That person may get 3 or 4 answers, or may get just yours. Again, listen. When that person answers, he's called CQ. I'm assuming it's a guy. He calls CQ, and you answer, and he responds. Pay attention to the signal report that you get. You may hear him S9, but he may only hear you S2 or 3. So again, listen, pay attention to what's going on. If your report is, let's say, down in the noise or close to the noise and it weak at the other end, then repeat things. You can say your name a couple times, give his signal report a couple of times. When you turn it back to him, don't just stop transmitting. Let him know you're turning it to him by saying, OK2RZ W6LG, over. Or OK4YL, this is W6LG. Back to you, Elena. So again, give that other person a clue that you're turning it back to him if conditions are weak. If he's hearing you S9 and conditions are stable, you can have kind of a back and forth like you would any conversation. QSL. It's a big bugaboo with me. I get tired of hearing it, and frankly, I think it's overused. QSL means, did you understand? If the person you're talking to says, you're 5 by 9, you don't need to say, did you understand? Did you understand? My name is Jim. QSL, did you get it? Did you understand? Just say over. QSL does not mean back to you. QSL means, did you copy? Goes back to the days of the telegraph lines, and a message would be sent, and the receiving station would, the sending station might say QSL. It was a question, and the other person might respond. Today it seems to be used as if to say that's over. So try to avoid saying QSL. Another common thing that you may want to avoid doing is a lot of the jargon. Some guys say 100 whiskeys. You're not running whiskeys, you're running watts. So maybe better just to say watts. I no longer use handle. I try to speak in just plain language with respect to as much as I can. So my location is Rockland, California. My name is Jim. Your report is 5 by 9. Sticking with plain language, I think, is a really good idea, as a habit to get into. I've been involved in several emergencies. Found a guy lost in the snow, house on fire, forest fires. In my 57 years, I've come across all kinds of things. It's important to speak plain language. There were times when I would have a fire captain next to me, and I'd be on 2 meters. And one time I remember really well, a friend of mine, Bob Laddie, was reporting the location of a fire, and he said it in plain language. So I didn't have to repeat to the fire captain what the guy was saying. He didn't say QTH, he said the location of the fire is. So the fire captain just had to hear what was going on and nothing more. I didn't have to interpret for him. Plain language is really important during emergencies. Stick with plain language. If you're talking to a dispatcher, I found a guy in the snow. He was lost and somewhat disabled in some regards. Just stick to plain language. I found him here. I'm hearing you okay. His name is. My location is. On HF, do the same thing. Just stick with plain language as much as you can. I fall into the habit of using a lot of Q signs because I have for years. But, for example, the name of this presentation is QSO, and really I mean contact. So try to stick with that. When you're on HF, slow your speech down just a bit. The person that you're talking to may not understand the language that you're using. Typical language, of course, is English. And some guys that you'll talk to sound like their English language skills are excellent when in fact they only know how to say my name is, or your report is, my location is, and they may actually use some of the Q signs like QTH. And so I remember one guy was a fellow on an island called Sao Tome, CR5SP. Didn't speak English, but he knew enough to say a signal. Everybody was 5'9", and he knew enough to say that, and his name was Al, and that was about it. So stick with plain language. If you're not certain that the person you're talking to understands English all that well, keep it relatively simple. Same thing with phonetics. Stick with phonetics that everybody can understand, and try not to use phonetics that might confuse someone. For example, I won't use the guy's real call sign, but I'll change it just a bit. Let's say my call sign was W6, here comes California. There's a guy that uses that here, and I won't say what state. Here comes California, HC. See, I have to think about it. It's confusing. So just use phonetics that everyone understands and don't confuse the issue. Just stick with that. It's okay to ask questions. If you engage in a conversation and the guy seems friendly and you've listened to him have a couple of contacts and he is engaging in a conversation, it's okay to ask a couple of questions if you want. And, there are some really interesting people. Some of the questions that I've asked are, do you have any other hobbies, photography and that kind of thing? I stay away from politics and religion. A person's religion and their politics, that can raise a whole bunch of issues. That's a whole nother discussion. I don't even want to go down that road in this presentation. Also, I try to stick to things that if my conversation is as if my conversation is being recorded and played to a group that maybe would decide whether or not we can keep the amateur frequencies that we have. That would be like the FCC commissioners. So I tend to stay away from things that are controversial. I don't want to get into an argument with somebody. Just be nice, be friendly, and enjoy the person you're talking to. I've met some really interesting people in those 50 to 100,000 conversations, and as I said, many of them have been friends for 50 years, and several have visited me, like DF2PY, Wolf, and Mike and Sissy OE6NBG from Austria, and it's a thrill, an absolute thrill to meet folks like that. So it's okay to ask someone if they're retired or where they live or what they do, if they're on a farm, that kind of thing. Their equipment, their antenna. If you have a question about their antenna, ask him. The guy may be an antenna engineer, and you might learn a lot by talking to him. In any case, two things I wanted you to take away from this presentation. One is listen, 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 and understand what the person's telling you or what you're hearing on the band. And two, enjoy, have fun. It is just unreal. We are so lucky to have the frequencies that we have. We are so lucky, for example, this is 2021, and we've gone through this pandemic that is still with us, but we've been able to sit at our equipment and talk to people in the U.S., or if we're in the U.S., or around the world. Guys in Europe, same thing. They've been able to stay at home, like Yuri and his wife, and not have to venture out and risk getting the disease that's been fatal to so many. So we're lucky to have the frequencies. We're lucky to have what we have. We are licensed radio operators. It is a hobby, but we are licensed radio operators, and our frequencies are a privilege. So keep that in mind. In any case, have a lot of fun. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, post them below.